Hello. If you're visiting for the first time, it's fantastic to have you here. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. This video features mostly true, scary stories with the sound of gentle rain in the background. If you're looking for something to help with sleeplessness, anxiety, or stress, you're in the right place. If you enjoy the stories, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. Thank you for being here. Now, let's begin. Welcome to my spooky tale called The Creepy Night at the Old Mill. I have an exciting story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. As I share my adventure, I'd love for you to comment where you're listening from. And don't forget to subscribe for more fun stories like this one. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about something special I found. It's a weight loss supplement that works while you sleep. Yes, you heard that right. You can lose weight without lifting a finger. Want to know more? Click the link in the description below to learn all about it. Now, get cozy, and let's jump into the story filled with eerie moments and unexpected twists. As I walked through the thick forest, I felt a chill in the air. The moon was bright, but the trees cast long shadows that danced around me. That night, I decided to explore an old mill at the edge of town. I had heard many stories about it. Some said it was haunted. Others said strange things happened there, especially after dark. I brushed off the stories, thinking they were just tales to scare children. But as I approached the mill, my heart began to race. It looked old and worn, with broken windows and a door hanging on its hinges. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the empty space inside. Stepping in, I felt an eerie silence surround me. Dust floated in the air, and the floorboards squeaked under my feet. The walls were covered in cobwebs, and everything smelled musty. As I walked deeper into the mill, I could hear the sound of water running nearby. I followed the noise, curious about what I would find. When I reached the back of the mill, I saw an old wheel spinning slowly in the water. It seemed like it hadn't moved in years. Suddenly, I heard a loud thud from upstairs, and my heart jumped. I froze for just a second, but my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to climb the rickety stairs creaking beneath my weight. With each step, I could hear the wood protesting against my movement. When I reached the top, I found a long hallway with doors on both sides. I was so curious. I opened the first door slowly, and inside, I saw old wooden crates covered in dust. But something caught my eye. A dark figure darted across the hallway. I blinked, and it was gone. My heart raced as I closed the door behind me. I took a step back, feeling like I was being watched. Gathering my courage, I opened another door. The room looked like a bedroom, but everything was overturned. A heavy blanket lay on the floor, and an old rocking chair swayed back and forth as if someone had just gotten up. I stepped inside, and the chair stopped moving. My breath caught in my throat. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew past me, and I shivered. I turned to leave, but before I could, I heard a soft whisper. "Get out," it said. My heart pounded in my chest, and I dashed out of the room, my feet barely touching the floor. I wanted to get out of that mill as fast as I could. I ran down the stairs, almost slipping on the worn steps. When I burst through the door, I felt the cool night air hit my face. But just as I thought I was safe, I heard a loud crash behind me. The door slammed shut on its own. I looked back, and I could see a figure standing in the doorway, watching me. That was it. I turned and ran. As I sprinted through the forest, branches scratched at my arms, and I could hear the laughter of something dark and haunting following me. Just when I thought I had lost it, I tripped over a root and fell hard onto the ground. I looked up, and the figure was now standing right over me. Its eyes glowed like bright lanterns in the dark. I was terrified and couldn't help but scream. But just as I felt the icy grip of fear take hold, the figure began to dissolve into thin air, leaving behind a chilling laugh that echoed through the woods. The sound haunted my mind as I scrambled to my feet and ran faster than I ever had before. When I finally reached the safety of my home, I slammed the door shut behind me and leaned against it, gasping for breath. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me back. I turned to look outside, and the moon was high in the sky, shining light across the trees. Everything seemed normal, But I knew I would never forget that creepy night at the old mill. As I tried to sleep, I couldn't help but think about that strange figure. Who was it? Why was the mill so eerie? I had more questions than answers. Just then, I remembered the weight loss supplement I had heard about. I thought, maybe I could lose a few pounds just by sleeping, like all those stories said. Click that link in the description below, and maybe you can join me in this strange adventure of losing weight without really trying. And so I lay awake, my mind racing with fear and curiosity, waiting for the sun to rise and hoping never to return to that terrifying old mill again. As I lay awake, my heart wouldn't calm down. The haunting laughter still echoed in my mind, wrapping around me like a thick fog. It felt as if the figure from the old mill was watching me even in the safety of my own room. I tossed and turned, trying to find comfort, but every creak of my house made me jump. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound from the corner of my room. My eyes shot open. Was it just the wind, or something more? I slowly turned to look, and my heart raced. In the dim light, I could see a shadow moving. I pulled the covers tightly around me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. As I squinted, I saw what looked like a dark shape creeping closer. It was there, standing by my dresser, its form shifting like smoke. I couldn't believe my eyes. "Get out," the voice whispered again, this time clearer and closer. It sounded like hundreds of voices mixed together, and it sent chills down my spine. I sat up quickly, adrenaline pumping through me. I had to do something. I mustered all my courage and yelled, "Who are you? What do you want?" My voice was shaky, but I needed to know. Silence enveloped the room for a moment, and then a gust of cold air swept past me, making the curtains billow like they were alive. I looked around, scared but determined. Suddenly, the shadow lunged at me. I jumped back, nearly falling off the bed. Just then, my lamp flickered to life with a bright flash. I shielded my eyes, but when I looked again, the dark figure was gone. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I climbed out of bed, shaking slightly. I realized I couldn't stay in my room. I had to investigate. I crept over to the window and peered outside. The moonlight cast strange shapes across the yard, and the trees looked even creepier than before. I thought about the mill and how things had felt so off that night. I felt a sudden urge to go back to that place. Even though I was terrified, maybe I could confront whatever was haunting me. I quickly grabbed a flashlight and slipped on my jacket, trying to convince myself it was just a ghost story. But deep down, I knew it was real. The air was cold as I stepped outside. The quiet of the night seemed louder than ever. It felt like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I walked quickly through the trees towards the mill, using the flashlight to pierce the darkness. Each step felt heavier as I got closer. The old mill looked even scarier now, with shadows dancing around it. When I got to the door, it was cracked open, as if inviting me in. I hesitated, but the thoughts of the shadow urged me forward. Inside, everything was just as I left it, yet somehow different. The air was thick, and I could feel a weight pressing down on me. The dust settled like a fog around my feet as I stepped cautiously inside. I switched on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the gloom. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang from above. I jumped, my heart racing again. I moved deeper into the mill, the beam of my flashlight shaking in my grip. I followed the sound up the stairs, praying it was just an animal, but my gut told me otherwise. As I reached the top, the hallway seemed darker, and a strange smell filled the air. Something like rotten wood mixed with something else I couldn't quite place. I forced myself to step forward, my feet moving almost on their own. Each door I passed loomed forebodingly. Then I noticed it. The door at the end of the hall was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness opening into the unknown. My breath caught in my throat. I wished I could turn back, but I stepped closer, driven by a mixture of dread and curiosity. I pushed the door open slowly. It squeaked loudly, echoing in the silence like a warning. Inside, I saw a child's room, but it felt far from innocent. Old toys were scattered around, and the window was broken, jagged glass sticking out like sharp teeth. In the corner stood a dusty old rocking horse, its paint chipped and peeling. I noticed something else, a small, faded photograph lying on the floor. I picked it up, and my stomach dropped. The picture showed a group of kids playing in front of the mill, but the strange part was one child in the picture looked exactly like the shadow I had seen. Just then, I heard giggles echoing through the hall, but it wasn't happy laughter. It was the kind of laughter that made my skin crawl. I swung around, pointing my flashlight frantically down the hall, but there was no one there. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling. The giggles stopped, replaced by a soft whisper. "Come play with us." A chill ran down my spine. The room felt colder. I could almost see my breath in the air. Panic surged through me. I had to get out of there. I stumbled back, my heart pounding louder with each step. I ran for the stairs, but then I heard it, a thumping sound behind me, like footsteps following me. I didn't dare to look back. I dashed down the stairs, but they felt impossibly long. Just as I reached the bottom, I felt a cold hand touch my shoulder, and I screamed. I spun around, and the shadow stood there, still and watching. Its glowing eyes pierced through the darkness, and I felt frozen, unable to move. "Why did you come back?" it whispered in that haunting voice, sending shivers through my whole body. I struggled to find my voice. All I could manage was, "I wanted to know who you are." The shadow leaned closer, its face twisting into a strange smile. "I am part of this mill. I am the echoes of those who played here long ago. You should not have come. This place is not safe." I felt an overwhelming sense of dread as I backed away, the shadow slowly approaching. My instinct screamed at me to run, but curiosity kept me rooted to the spot. "What do you want from me?" I managed to ask, my words barely a whisper. It tilted its head, and the expression shifted into something darker, more sinister. "We just want a friend, someone to play with, forever." The air grew heavy again, and I could feel it all around me, closing in like a cage. I remembered the picture, the children, and realized this was not just any story. It was a real-life warning, and I was trapped in the middle of it. In that moment, the fear pushed me to act. I turned and ran for the door, pumping my legs as fast as they would go. I could hear the shadow chasing me, laughter ringing in my ears, blending with the eerie whispers that echoed through the mill. Just as I reached the door, I felt a chill grit my heart. The door slammed shut before I could escape. I pounded my fists against it, desperation taking hold. But the laughter grew louder, swirling around me. "Let me out!" I cried, the panic rising. The air felt charged, like a storm ready to break. Suddenly, the door creaked open slightly, and I seized the chance. I sprinted through, my heart pounding as I tried to escape the curse of the old mill. But as I dashed into the night, I glanced back, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The shadow was standing in the doorway, its smile wide and teeth sharp, waving goodbye as I ran into the dark forest. I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of town. I fell to my knees, gasping for breath, tears streaming down my cheeks. I was free, but I could still feel its presence lingering, like a dark cloud looming over me. As I sat there trembling, I knew I could never tell anyone what had happened. Who would believe me? The old mill had taken its grip on me, and a part of me felt that I would never escape its curse completely. That night haunted me long after I left the mill, each creak in my house reminding me of the sinister laughter and glowing eyes following me. I thought about the weight loss supplement again. Maybe it could help me feel better about all this, take my mind off the horrors I had faced. I just needed to find a way to forget. I lay back down that night, staring at the ceiling. My mind raced, replaying every moment. The glow of the shadow's eyes haunted my dreams, and I wondered what it would take to truly be free from the fear that now lived inside me. And as sleep finally took me, I couldn't shake the feeling that the old mill was still watching. It had found me, and I could sense it waiting, lurking in the shadows, ready for our next meeting. As I lay there, the shadows of the night loomed large over me. I tried to forget what had happened at the mill, but it was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the glowing eyes of the shadow and heard the laughter echoing in my head. It was like a song I couldn't shake, and I knew I wouldn't find peace until I faced it again. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling. School was a blur. I sat in class, but my mind was far away. I couldn't focus on math or reading. All I could think about was the old mill and what awaited me there. The bell finally rang, and my heart raced with anticipation. I had to return that night and find answers. I made plans with a couple of friends to come with me. I told them it would be an adventure, something exciting to share. In reality, I wanted them there for support. I texted them and told them to meet me at the edge of the forest as night fell. I hoped they would be brave enough to face whatever waited inside the mill with me. When the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt a knot form in my stomach. I grabbed my flashlight, my heart beating like a drum. As I walked through the darkening forest, I noticed how the trees seemed to lean in, their branches reaching for me like bony fingers. I took a deep breath and told myself I could face this, that I wasn't alone. When I reached the meeting spot, my friends were already there. Sam, a tall guy with a big heart, and Lucy, who was always up for a thrill. They could tell I was nervous, but I put on a brave face and smiled at them. "Are you ready for an adventure?" I said, trying to keep the mood light. "Adventure or not, I'm scared," Sam replied, looking at the dark trees surrounding us. "What if something happens?" "Oh, come on," Lucy said, her eyes sparkling. "It'll just be fun. Besides, we'll stick together." With reluctant excitement, we started our trek toward the mill. As we walked, the forest grew denser, and the sounds of night came alive around us. The hoot of an owl, the rustling of leaves, and the distant sounds of small animals scurrying through the underbrush. Reaching the old mill felt like entering a different world. It loomed before us, dark and menacing, with a slight breeze bringing an unsettling chill. The door still hung open, as if inviting us in once more. I felt the same knot in my stomach that I had the night before, but I couldn't back down now. "Are we really doing this?" Lucy whispered, glancing at me. I nodded, trying to look confident. We stepped inside together, the door creaking loudly in the silence. The air was still and thick, with an unsettling smell of mold and decay. I shone my flashlight around the room, illuminating the dust and shadows. I led the way, my flashlight beam flickering across the rooms, revealing forgotten things. Empty jars, rusted tools, and broken furniture. Then, we went upstairs, my heart pounding louder with each step we took. The noise seemed to come from everywhere at once, the wood beneath our feet creaking and groaning, almost as if it were alive. The atmosphere grew heavier, and I felt a sense of dread creeping over me. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, and I could see Lucy rolling her eyes at my hesitation. "Grow a backbone," she teased, but I could see the nervousness in her eyes. The hallway stretched before us, dark and foreboding, with doors lined up on both sides. I could almost hear whispers flowing from behind the doors, just beyond my understanding. I opened the first door on my right. The room was empty and covered in dust, but a large mirror hung on the wall, cracked and tarnished. It loomed like a dark portal, reflecting twisted images of us. Suddenly, the door across from me creaked open on its own, and all three of us froze. The dim light from the flashlight caught a glimpse of movement inside. A shadow flitted past the doorway. My heart raced, and I shouted, "Did you see that?" Before my friends could answer, I rushed toward the door, the fear pushing me forward. Just as I reached the entrance, the figure disappeared down the hall. "Wait! Come back!" I called, stepping into the room. It was unnervingly quiet now. As we followed the strange shadow, my fingers trailed along the wall for support. I noticed something wet on the floor, and when I looked down, my breath caught in my throat. It was a dark smear, like blood, leading down the hall. It was fresh, glistening in the faint light. My instinct screamed at me to turn back, but I pressed on, still drawn by curiosity. The more I walked, the more oppressive the air became. It felt heavy, wrapping around me like a thick blanket. The others were close behind, whispering to one another, their fears exuding from them. "This isn't funny anymore," Sam said, his voice low. "I think we should leave." We reached the end of the hallway, where the shadows danced wildly with the light of my flashlight. I turned to face my friends and saw their faces pale, etched with fear. But then another noise broke the silence. A harsh, raspy laugh echoed from behind me. I spun around, my heart racing. The shadow loomed in front of us, its eyes glowing more brightly than before. It stepped closer, and I could see its features, distorted and gnarled, a grotesque mask of a face. "Why did you come back?" it asked, the voice a mix of childlike curiosity and deep menace. The room felt like it was closing in on us, the shadows twisting and turning. Lucy gasped, clutching Sam's arm tightly, but I stood frozen. We wanted to know. I managed to shout, though my voice wavered with fear. Suddenly, the shadow lunged forward, and a chill ran down my spine. "You are not supposed to be here," it hissed, as the walls around us began to vibrate, sending dust raining down from the ceiling. The air filled with the sound of whispering, growing louder, drowning us in the cacophony. We turned to flee, but the shadows became thick and swirling, forming walls around us, making it hard to see. Panic surged through me as I tried to find the staircase. I grabbed Sam's and Lucy's hands, my fingers trembling in fear. "Over here," I shouted, tugging them toward what I believed was the staircase. But as we stumbled forward, the ground shook, and the whispering turned into a deafening roar. "Let us play," the shadow's voice echoed, becoming more sinister. The room spun around us, and I could feel the weight of dread pressing down. My heart raced, and with one last effort, I pulled my friends toward a dim light peeking from underneath the door at the end of the hallway. We burst through it and found ourselves back in the child's room, the spots of light from my flashlight illuminating the toys eerily scattered, as if someone had just been there playing. In the corner stood the rocking horse, swaying back and forth, though no one was there to push it. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us, sealing us in. I turned to face the darkness, trembling. "We need to get out," I yelled, grasping for a way to leave, and I could feel something watching us from all corners of the room. But before I could make a move, the temperature dropped, and I felt a cold breath against my neck. "You can't escape," the whisper came again, chilling my bones. We were trapped in a nightmare, corners of the room closing in, thick shadows slithering around our feet. In that moment, I knew we had to confront the shadows. "What do you want?" I shouted into the abyss, uncertain of what would come next. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating, before the voice returned, echoing around us. "Play with us forever, and we promise to keep you safe." "No," I screamed, desperately. "Let us go." Just when I thought we would be swallowed whole, a blinding light surged through the room, the shadows retreating, shrieking in rage. I felt the warmth of the light wrap around us, and I knew we needed to break the darkness. Without thinking, I grabbed the dusty photograph from before and held it up, directing the light at the shadows. "This isn't your home anymore," I shouted. The shadows hissed with fury, but the light grew stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat. The laughter turned into wails as I pushed toward the door, pulling Sam and Lucy with me. "Run!" I yelled, racing toward the blinding light. The shadows lunged again, grasping at us with cold fingers, but a powerful wave of warmth surged through the air. The door burst open, revealing the outside world bathed in moonlight. I could barely hear the shadows' howls above my pulse. We bolted through the door, collapsing on the ground outside, panting for breath. The cold night air felt so different from the suffocating darkness of the mill. We had escaped, but a sense of dread still lingered, like shadows waiting to pounce again. I glanced back at the old mill, its windows dark and eerie. "It's not over," I whispered, my heart heavy with the knowledge that the shadows might still be inside, waiting for their next victim to wander in. As we stumbled away from the mill, the world felt different. There was no laughter anymore, only silence, a silence that echoed with promises of things yet to come. I knew those shadows were not finished with me or my friends. With each step, I felt the weight of their gaze, still tracking us, still waiting for the perfect moment to return. I took a deep breath, wishing I could forget. But the shadows of that night seemed forever etched in my mind, waiting for another chance to pull me back in. As I glanced back at the old mill, a chill ran down my spine. Its dark silhouette loomed against the moonlit sky, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching us. I shuddered at the thought of those glowing eyes from the shadows. They felt like they were burned into my memory, lingering in the corners of my mind. Even as we stumbled away from the building, the night air was cooler than before, and the rustling leaves sounded like whispers sharing secrets amongst themselves. Sam and Lucy walked beside me, their eyes wide with fear. We didn't speak much. The silence was heavy, filled with an unspoken dread. I could sense that we all felt the same anxious energy, like a storm waiting to break. Every step I took felt like the shadows were reaching for my ankles, pulling me back toward the mill that was now shrouded in darkness. I tried to focus on our surroundings and keep the fear at bay, but the woods felt different on the way back. Every shadow turned into a figure. Every rustle felt like something creeping up behind us. We should have never gone back. Sam finally broke the uneasy silence, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded in agreement, wishing I could take back our adventure. Just then, I heard it. The faint giggles floating through the trees. It was chilling, the sound slicing through the night air like a knife. I froze, feeling goosebumps rise all over my skin. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Lucy peered into the darkness, her face pale. "It's just the wind, right?" But I knew it wasn't just the wind. The laughter came again, louder this time, echoing off the trees. "It's them," I breathed, my heart racing. "They're following us." Panic surged through me, and I quickened my pace. I could hear the laughter now, a chorus of petty glee that sent shockwaves of terror down my spine. I wanted to run faster, to escape the echoes of that dreadful laughter. But as we hurried, the shadows seemed to grow taller, stretching towards us like hungry beasts ready to pounce. I glanced back, and for a split second I saw them. Figures darting between the trees, children with hollow eyes, shadows of innocence twisted by some dark force. My breath caught in my throat. "We have to get out of here," I shouted, feeling the fear erupt inside me. We sprinted through the trees, branches snapping under our feet. The laughter became more erratic, swirling around us. The shadows danced along the ground, taunting us, their whispers like a siren song luring us deeper into the forest. I felt like we were trapped in a nightmare, and every time I dared to look back, the figures seemed closer, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark. I led my friends toward a narrow path I remembered, desperately searching for a way to the safety of our neighborhood. But the deeper we went, the more lost I felt. The trees were closing in, blocking out the moonlight and casting an eerie darkness around us. I was beginning to panic. The laughter felt like it was consuming the air, stifling my breath. Then suddenly, we broke through the trees and stumbled into a small clearing bathed in moonlight. It felt surreal, like emerging from a tunnel of darkness into a haunting dream. But there was no comfort here. In the center of the clearing stood a small, decrepit schoolhouse, its windows broken and door ajar, an old bell hanging crookedly above the entrance. "What is that?" Lucy asked, her voice shaky. "It wasn't here before." I shook my head, unable to answer. The laughter surged again, echoing from behind us. I could feel it washing over me, a wave of malevolence. "We need to check it out. Maybe it's a way out," I suggested, forcing myself to sound brave. My heart was pounding, and every instinct screamed to turn away. We approached the schoolhouse, the door creaking open as if inviting us in. The air inside was stale, filled with the scent of mold and something else, something rotten. I shined my flashlight around the room, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Desks were overturned, and old drawings were tacked to the walls, each one depicting children playing in a field, their faces twisted into grotesque smiles. "This place gives me the creeps," Sam muttered, glancing back as if expecting the shadows to creep in behind us. I felt the weight of those twisted smiles pressing down on us, the very essence of the nightmares I had faced. We moved deeper into the schoolhouse, the floorboards creaking beneath our weight. The laughter faded and turned into low whispers, drenched in despair. "You shouldn't have come here," a voice whispered from the corner of the room, sending shivers through my body. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice cracking. The shadows seemed to coil around us, shifting restlessly. I wanted to run, to escape this nightmare, but a part of me felt drawn to the voice, compelled to understand what it meant. "Come play with us." The shadows seemed to swirl and sync with the words, the air thick with tension. I felt my heart drop. Had we stepped into a trap, ensnared by the very shadows we had tried to escape? I glanced at Lucy and Sam. Their eyes mirrored my fear, but curiosity clung to us. In the corner of the eerily quiet classroom sat an old chalkboard covered in dust. I approached it, hoping it would provide some answers. Clear messages scratched into the surface sent chills down my spine. "Help us. They won't let us leave." And a child's simple drawing depicting a group of children trapped behind a wall, their faces twisted in horror. "I don't like this place," Lucy said, her voice hushed. "Can we please leave?" Before I could respond, laughter erupted from all sides, echoing through the schoolhouse, drowning out our thoughts. I felt lost, trapped in a cycle of fear. The shadows were so close now. I could feel icy fingers grazing my skin, tightening their grip. "We have to leave now," I yelled, turning around to flee. But as I made my way back to the door, I stumbled, and the flashlight flickered, casting strange shadows on the peeling walls. In that moment of darkness, I felt something wrap around my ankle, pulling me back with a terrifying force. "Don't go," the voice echoed, filled with desperation and anger. I thrashed, trying to escape the pull, fear washing over me. Sam and Lucy yanked me, their faces pale, desperation mirrored in their eyes. Struggling against the invisible force, I clawed my way forward, feeling the breath of the whispering shadows inching closer. "Come back!" The voice filled the room, vibrating against the walls, and I felt my heart race in response. Just then, the door slammed shut, cutting off our only escape. We were trapped, surrounded by laughter that twisted into screams of rage. The darkness pressed in, suffocating us, and I felt the shadows close around me. With all the strength I had, I yelled no. "We're not playing anymore." I reached for the door handle, feeling the cold metal dig into my palm. My friends joined in, pushing against the door, and slowly I felt the barrier give way. I could hear the whispers turn frantic behind us, uncertain chaos gripping the shadows. Finally, with a violent shove, the door burst open, and we tumbled out into the warm night air. The moon lit our path as we bolted from the schoolhouse, the shadows screeching in anger, losing their grip. We ran through the clearing, back into the safety of the trees, breathless, but I could faintly hear the ling, airing whispers, shadows that promised they would come back, shadows that weren't done with us yet. As we reached the edge of the forest, I allowed myself a moment to glance back. The schoolhouse sat silent and still, shrouded in darkness, as if daring us to return. I turned to my friends, knowing this night would haunt us forever, and no matter how far we ran, the shadows might always find a way to reach us. As I stood at the forest's edge, my heart was still pounding. I could hardly believe we had escaped, but deep down, I knew the shadows were not finished with us. They had followed us out of the mill, their laughter still ringing in my ears like an echoing nightmare. I glanced over at Sam and Lucy, their eyes wide with fear, and I tried to calm them with a reassuring smile that I didn't quite feel. "Maybe we're safe now," I said, attempting to sound confident, but I wasn't sure I convinced myself. The woods around us felt alive, the trees extending their gnarled branches as if they wanted to grab us, to pull us back. "We should head home," I suggested, hoping to put distance between us and whatever we had encountered. Reluctantly, we started to walk, taking slow, careful steps down the familiar path that led us back to our neighborhood. But as we moved, I felt a chill wrap around me, like cold fingers tracing along my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every rustle of leaves sent a shiver through me, and I could hear the faint laughter still carrying through the branches. My mind raced with memories of what we had seen. The ghostly children, the schoolhouse, the voices begging for us to stay. The laughter grew louder, echoing like taunts. "They're playing with us," I murmured, but it hardly felt like a game anymore. I turned to my friends, hoping they could offer some comfort, but they were just as pale as I felt. "We need to move faster," Sam said, glancing nervously behind us. I nodded, and we broke into a hurried walk, each of us glancing over our shoulders, expecting the shadows to leap out at any moment. The path seemed to stretch on forever, each step becoming heavier as the laughter transformed into something darker. A chorus of cries filled with desperation. I could almost feel the shadows seeping into my very being, tugging at my heart and whispering promises of eternal play, of never being alone again. "Guys, it's getting worse," Lucy whispered, her voice quivering. I could see her hands shaking. We should have stayed away. I felt guilt wash over me, realizing I was the one who led us back to the mill, the one who had suggested we investigate more. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I thought it would be fun. I didn't think." Suddenly, I caught movement in my peripheral vision. I turned, but nothing was there, just the shadows dancing behind the trees, teasing. I felt a jolt of panic surge through me. "Did you guys see that?" I asked, my voice rising higher than I intended. "What if they're still out there?" Just then, the laughter burst forth again, this time echoing from all directions. It was louder, more chaotic, and with each note, I felt it clawing at my sanity, feeding off my fear. "Run!" I shouted, and we sped down the path, our feet pounding against the ground as we desperately searched for safety. I could hear branches snapping and leaves rustling behind us, and the laughter twisted into something manic, a cacophony of jeers that felt alive. In the distance, the silhouette of our neighborhood finally came into view, the warm glow of streetlights reaching out to us like welcoming arms. We pushed ourselves harder, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Just a little further," I said between breaths, though I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in closer. But just as we reached the edge of the forest, something unexpected happened. The ground beneath us shifted suddenly, catching us all off guard. The path we had taken began to dissolve, the trees wrapping around as if trying to form a wall behind us. I stumbled, my heart racing, as the laughter escalated to a shrieking pitch, filling the air with malicious joy. "No, we can't go back," I screamed, trying to pull my friends away from the encroaching shadows. Lucy fell back, her foot trapped in the shifting earth. I lunged to grab her hand, but the darkness closed around us, tightening its grip. I could feel a chill wrapping around my leg, and I looked down to see a shadowy tendril reaching out, trying to envelop me in its cold embrace. I looked at Sam and Lucy, their faces reflecting the same dread I felt. "We need to fight it," I said, clutching Lucy's hand tightly, feeling the warmth in contrast to the growing cold. "We have to break through." With renewed determination, we began to push against the darkness. I could feel the laughter swirling around us, trying to beckon us into submission, but I wasn't about to give in. "Stay close," I shouted, taking a deep breath. We huddled together, forming a protective circle. "Remember the light," I urged, recalling how harsh light had driven the shadows away before. "We need to create our own." Digging deep into my pockets, I found my phone, quickly flicking it on. The bright screen pierced through the darkness, and for a fleeting moment, the whispers hushed, the shadows recoiling. "Let's go," I yelled, plunging forward, the light illuminating the way. The shadows wailed, their laughter turning into cries of anger as we pressed onward, breaking free from the grasp of the darkness. I could feel the ground solidify under my feet as the trees withdrew, retreating from the fierce glow of my phone's light. We sprinted across the threshold of our neighborhood, finally breaking free from the forest's grip. The moment we crossed that line, a wave of relief washed over me. The laughter faded into the night, echoing softly, as if it were never really there. My heart continued to pound, each beat a reminder of how close we had come to being lost. We slowed to a walk, panting heavily, still glancing back at the shadows that lurked just beyond the tree line. I felt the warmth of the street lights surround us, grounding me in reality. But even as we stood together, a sobering thought crept in. What if they come back? Sam whispered, his voice trembling slightly as he looked toward the dark woods. The question hung in the air, heavy and unsettling, and a chill ran down my spine. I didn't have an answer, and the weight of my decision to return to the mill lingered. We made our way to my house, the journey feeling longer than it should have. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, and I could almost convince myself that they were still chasing us, just waiting for the perfect moment to slip back into our lives. As we reached my front door, I turned to face my friends. We should stick together from now on, I said, hoping to provide some comfort after everything we'd endured. No more exploring alone. As I unlocked the door, the dread settled in the pit of my stomach. I knew our adventure was not truly over. It felt more like a beginning. With the weight of the shadows still hanging in the air, I stepped inside, racing for whatever else might come next, knowing the shadows were still lurking just out of sight. As I walked inside my house, the familiar surroundings felt strangely foreign. The living room was dimly lit, shadows creeping along the walls. I closed the door behind us, locking it tight, hoping the solid click would keep the darkness at bay. My heart was still racing, each thump echoing the fear that lingered in my mind. Are we really safe now? Lucy whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking too loud might summon the shadows back. I looked at her, wishing I could tell her everything would be fine, wishing I truly believed it. Reality, it sent a shiver down my spine, reminding me that we weren't alone. I turned off the kitchen lights, keeping only a small lamp lit. The beam illuminated our faces, highlighting the uncertainty written in our expressions. What do we do now? Lucy asked, chewing her bar slowly, her eyes darting around the room as if expecting someone to appear from the shadows. Let's just wait it out, I said, trying to sound brave. We can watch a movie, keep the noise up. But as the words left my mouth, a feeling of dread washed over me. I was uneasy about attracting any unwanted attention. I grabbed the remote, trying to focus on something mundane, something that would ground us. As the movie played, I found it hard to concentrate. Every creak of the house made me flinch. I could feel the tension rising, an invisible blanket of fear tightening around us. I glanced at Sam, who was still rigorously watching the window, his body tense like a coiled spring. Maybe we should check the back door, I suggested, needing the reassurance that all was, at least, still locked tight. We crept through the dim hallway, the soft glow of the lamp fading behind us. When we reached the back door, I placed my hand on the knob, turning it slowly. Everything felt heavy, like I was disturbing the stillness that wrapped around us. I took a deep breath, and together we opened the door to peek outside. The backyard was quiet, shadows pooling in the corners as the moon hung low in the sky. It looks clear, I said, trying to convince myself as much as them. But even as I spoke, an instinct told me otherwise. I squinted into the darkness, straining to see if anything was out of the ordinary. Just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye. The trees at the far edge of the yard seemed to sway in a way that wasn't right. Did you see that? I gasped, stepping back. Sam and Lucy exchanged wary glances, and that was when the whispers returned, echoing from the outside, coaxing and calling us to step out further. It's just the wind, Lucy whispered. But even she didn't sound convinced. The whispers grew louder, a sinister melody weaving through the air, begging us to come and play. We need to close this door, I whispered urgently, feeling the cold breath of the shadows creeping closer. Suddenly, a loud bang came from the back of the house, a sound unmistakably like something hitting the wall. My heart stopped. What was that? Sam asked, his voice trembling as he stepped back from the door. We should get inside. Before I could respond, the whispers shifted into frantic giggling, a chilling sound that wrapped around us as the shadows deepened. I couldn't believe my ears. It was the same laughter we had heard in the woods, echoing even louder now, filling the air with a sense of dread. Panic surged through me. Close the door now, I commanded, shoving it shut just as a force slammed against it. We stumbled back, but the door held firm. The shadows outside swirled, curling in on themselves, forming a dark mass that clawed at the window and walls. It was as if they were trying to break through, desperate to reach us. They want to come in. I breathed, fear paralyzing me. Should we call for help? Lucy suggested, her eyes wide with horror. But deep down, I suspected that even if we called for help, no one would believe us. Would anyone even respond in time? I grabbed my phone, flicking it on only to see the screen flicker with low battery. Crap! I exclaimed, the dread settling heavier in my chest. Just then, we heard another sound, a soft tapping, gentle and rhythmic, coming from the window. It was like fingernails drumming against the glass, a sickeningly familiar rhythm that made my skin crawl. I turned slowly, not wanting to look, but feeling drawn to the source. What if it's them? Sam whispered, standing beside me, his voice strained. What if they've really come for us this time? The shadows gathered at the window, merging into shapes that were once human but twisted beyond recognition. I could see their hollow eyes, gaping mouths frozen in forms of laughter. They're trying to get in, I whispered, my throat dry. We have to do something. We need light. Lucy yelled, scrambling for the flashlight in her bag. She pressed the button, and the beam of light cut through the darkness, casting the shapes into stark relief. The laughter turned to shrieks as the shadows recoiled, but they didn't disappear. Instead, they seemed to multiply, spreading like ink blotting out the light. Keep the light on them, I shouted, but it was hard to keep the beam steady as fear gripped my limbs. I gritted my teeth, willing myself to stay focused. As long as we can keep the shadows at bay, we might find a way to escape this nightmare. Then, in a sudden twist, the back door shook violently, rattling on its hinges. The shadows surged with fury, pounding against it as if trying to break through. Let's barricade it, Sam suggested, his voice urgent. We hurried back, pushing furniture against the wooden door, our hearts racing as the shadows clawed and howled, their laughter now twisted into eerie cries of anger. Even as we worked, the whispers and laughter woven with shadows tantalized us, enticing us to give in. Just let us play, one whispered, smooth and warm like velvet, piercing through the tension. You can come join us. It will be fun. No, we won't, I shouted, feeling my resolve strengthen in the face of their temptations. We would not allow whatever this was to win. I wanted to scream, to break free from the nightmare that was enveloping us. With all our strength, we finally shoved the last piece of furniture against the door, bracing ourselves as the shadows pounded relentlessly. But deep down, a new fear settled in. What if they find another way? Let's head back to my room. It's safer, I suggested, heart racing as I realized the windows were still vulnerable. We raced out of the kitchen, but the shadows pressed behind us, slipping through the gaps in our barricade as if aware of our every move. Once again, the laughter erupted, filling the house with a cacophony of eerie sounds that clawed at my sanity. Hurry, I yelled, pushing through the hallway towards my room. I could hear the shadows following, their whispers growing louder, echoing as if taunting us. We reached my room and slammed the door shut, locking it tight. I turned to see Lucy and Sam collapsing against the wall, panting heavily, eyes wide with fear. What do we do now? Lucy gasped, desperation in her voice. I felt the walls echo, the pounding outside, the shadows clawing at our sanctuary, relentless in their pursuit. We have to think, I said, my mind racing. They're trying to get in. We need to hold them off. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed a pillow and shoved it against the crack at the bottom of the door, hoping it would keep the whispers at bay, if only for a little longer. But the shadows murmured around us, creeping, wrapping their tendril-like forms around the edges of our vision, seeming to seep into the very fabric of reality. I could feel their cold presence pressing against us, suffocating and relentless. They won't give up, I whispered, trembling as a new surge of panic washed over me. And just like that, the door bulged inward, straining against us. My heart raced as dread filled the room, and I knew right then that we had to fight back, or we risked losing everything. The door bulged inward, with each violent thump from the shadows outside, and my heart raced faster than I thought possible. I could feel an intense pressure building around us, the air thick and heavy as the whispers morphed into an unsettling lullaby, a sound that was both soothing and terrifying all at once. The shadows seemed to sense our fear, feeding off it, growing bolder with each moment we hesitated. "We need to find something to defend ourselves," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I had to think, stay calm despite the chaos outside. I scanned the room, looking for anything we could use. The desk sat in the corner with papers scattered all over. An old baseball bat lay forgotten beneath my bed, a vestige of childhood I suddenly wished I had held onto longer. "Over there," Sam exclaimed, and I nodded, stumbling over the mess on my floor. I grabbed the bat, feeling its weight in my hands, a small glimmer of hope flickering inside me. I felt a rush of adrenaline, knowing I had to protect my friends, protect us from whatever was waiting to pounce. "What do we do if they get in?" Lucy asked, her voice quaking. I didn't have a solid answer to that. The truth is, the shadows were closing in, trying to seep through the cracks, their whispers growing louder, morphing into a chorus of dark promises. Even as I tightened my grip on the bat, I could hear them. "Join us. You'll be one of us. Forever." "No," I shouted, looking at them both with determination. "We will fight. We are not giving in." Their eyes locked with mine, and in that moment, I felt a sense of unity. Just then, the door lurched again, this time slamming against the doorframe with such force it rattled the light fixtures above. Shadows began to snake beneath it, swirling like thick smoke, pooling right at our feet. I felt my breath hitch, the coolness creeping toward me, tugging at my jeans, as if trying to pull me down, pull me into their darkness. "Get back!" I yelled, instinctively swinging the bat toward the door. But I didn't connect with anything tangible. It felt like swinging through fog, my heart pounding as I realized that it was more than just shadows outside. There was a presence, something much darker creeping into the room. Lucy gasped, pointing at the window, where dark silhouettes took shape through the fabric of the curtains. One shadow stood out, tall and twisted, arms stretching unnaturally to fit the size of the glass. "It's watching us," she managed to choke out, paralyzed with fear. I could see its distorted face, two hollow eyes peering in, the mouth curled into a sinister grin. We huddled together, pressing our backs to the wall, the bat clutched tightly in my hands. The whispers crescendoed, creeping under my skin and filling my ears until I couldn't think straight. "What do we do?" Sam yelled, his voice rising in pitch, panic overwhelming him. I could see him shaking, the fear reflected in Lucy's eyes, and I knew I had to act fast. Suddenly, with an ear-splitting crash, the door buckled, tipping over the furniture we had piled against it. The shadows poured into the room, swirling and writhing like angry serpents, their whispers now a chaotic jumble of voices, begging and coaxing. "Play with us, come join our game." They wrapped around me, cold and suffocating, and I swung the bat wildly, hoping to connect with something solid, driving the darkness back. "Don't let them touch you," I shouted, backing toward my bed, trying to keep any part of me from their grasp. My heart raced wildly as I fought against the overwhelming sense of dread that threatened to consume me. With every swing of the bat, the shadows recoiled, but their forces were relentless and took on forms that were both terrifying and sad. I could see faint outlines of the children we'd encountered before, tiny faces twisted in agony, their eyes pleading. "Help us," one whispered, its voice a soft echo in the storm of confusion. "Stay with us forever." I felt my heart clench, but I shook my head, my resolve solidifying. I turned to my friends, drawing strength even as the darkness seeped in closer. "Stick together," I yelled, feeling desperate as the forms of the lost children writhed around us, their faces a chilling reflection of innocence lost. I could hear them laughing, still echoing the memories of our earlier encounter, mocking our fear and uncertainty as they swarmed, tightening their grip on the air around us. I had to think, We need to grab the flashlight, I urged, motioning toward the drawer near my desk. A quick scan revealed it was still there, and Lucy darted toward it while I swung the bat in a wide arc. I saw the shadows falter, momentarily pushed back by the movement. Now, Lucy, find it. Lucy fumbled through the drawer, her fingers frantic, and finally shouted, "Got it." It was small, but I believed it could create a barrier between us and the encroaching shadows. As she rushed back to us, the shadows seemed to wail in response, their laughter mistaking our hope for despair. With shaking hands, I took the flashlight from her. I pressed the button, watching as beams of light cut through the darkness like a knife. The twisted faces twisted away, their laughter fading to frightened whimpers. "It's working," Sam exclaimed, his voice brightening with surprise. "To the corners. Light up the corners," I yelled, pointing toward where the shadows gathered. Each stroke of the beam chased the darkness back, illuminating the faces of the lost children as they shrieked in anger. Their eyes flickered with something, perhaps a long-lost plea for help, or maybe it was an anger for being pushed away. But before we could celebrate our small victory, the shadows grew bolder, expanding as if testing the barrier of light we now wielded. The laughter, though softened, transformed into a chilling symphony, a twisted lullaby that sent chills down my spine. "Join us, stay with us." I felt the pull of despair creeping back into my mind, threatening to consume me once again. "We can't let them win," I shouted, feeling the panic rise with every second. "Don't listen." Closer they came, their cold tendrils reaching toward the light, hungry and insistent. I could feel the weight of their presence, as if they were trying to snatch the very light from our hands. I pointed the flashlight toward the center of the chaos, flooding the room with brightness. And then, a strange thing happened. The shadows began to convulse. It was as if they were writhing in pain, and suddenly I could see glimpses of what lay behind their twisted forms, glimmers of the innocent children they had once been before darkness consumed them. The sight broke my heart, and for a moment I hesitated, my resolve faltering. "Fight it!" Lucy yelled, seeing the uncertainty in me. "We can't let them in." Her voice snapped me back to reality, the grip of fear releasing just enough for me to regain focus. I squeezed the flashlight tighter, forcing myself to stay strong against their pull. "Focus on the light," I said, and we positioned ourselves in such a way that the flashlight illuminated every corner of the room. I could feel the shadows pushing back, trying to envelop us, their coldness creeping along my skin. It almost felt comforting, but I wouldn't let it win. "Stay together. Keep the light steady," I commanded, forcing my legs to hold firm despite the tremors of fear crashing through me like waves. I could see Sam and Lucy standing strong beside me, their faces illuminated with fierce determination, their breathing quick but steady. It fueled my resolve, reminding me that we were not alone in this. As the shadows writhed, edged, and shrieked, a moment of clarity struck me. We need to use our voices. We can't let them drown us out. Talking loudly, I began to chant a simple phrase over and over, asking for the light to leave and the darkness to remain away from us. My friends followed suit, repeating the chant in chorus. "Stay away. Stay away. You don't belong here." With every repetition, the shadows shrank back, the air growing a little warmer, as if our words were pushing against the chill they radiated. The laughter shifted, turning into something desperate, angry, as the tendrils grew thinner and the whisperings less coherent. But even as the shadows recoiled, I could tell we weren't out of danger yet. They still loomed close, ever present, waiting for any sign of weakness. I realized we needed to do more. We have to convince them we're stronger. They will only respect us if we demand it. Taking a deep breath, I let my voice grow louder, my words powerful in the face of despair. "We are not afraid of you. Leave us be. You will not take us." The air seemed to crackle with energy, and I heard Sam and Lucy echo my words, their voices rising and mingling with mine. With that, the shadows hissed, swirling in a chaotic frenzy. I could see their forms dissipate a little more, and it filled me with a sense of hope. "It's working," I cried, our chant lifting the weight of the darkness just a little more. Keep going. We pressed on, our voices raising higher, drowning out the whispers that begged us to join them. You do not own us. We belong to the light. The shadows convulsed violently, their whispers turning to wails of agony that echoed through the room. It was as if we were wrestling with the darkness, pulling it back with every ounce of strength and unity we could muster. I felt power surging through me, a strength I hadn't known existed. But as I leaned into the light, I could see that the forms of the lost children were still there, their faces twisted with longing and despair. Help us, one of them pleaded, and I felt a pang of sorrow stab deep within my heart. I can't leave you, I shouted, my voice breaking. With that cry, the shadows surged, filling the room once more, their anger rising, trying to pull me into their depths. But I was no longer just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every lost soul trapped in the darkness. I willed my heart to be strong, my resolve fiercer than ever. Fight! I cried out, gripping the flashlight tighter. You don't belong here. In that moment something shifted. The shadows began to splinter, their once solid forms becoming more translucent, floating away like remnants of smoke. I pressed the light toward them with all my strength, pushing back the darkness, trying to set free whoever had been lost. Stay back, I commanded, my voice echoing in the room. And then it happened. A brilliant burst of light exploded from the flashlight, illuminating everything around us. I felt it coursing through my veins, the warmth rushing in like an embrace from the sun. The shadows shrieked in agony, twisting and spiraling back, losing their grip on reality, scattering into the corners of the room before vanishing altogether. The laughter faded to silence, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I could breathe a little easier. Did we do it? Lucy asked breathlessly, her eyes wide and filled with cautious hope. I looked around our small room, still shaking but feeling the weight lift. I think so, I said, glancing at Sam and Lucy, who both seemed to breathe in relief as well. What just happened? Sam murmured, staring into the empty space where the shadows had been. Are they really gone? I didn't know how to answer, my mind still reeling from the chaos. But as I looked around, I felt a sense of calm returning. I think we made them leave, I ventured cautiously. But we have to make sure to stay vigilant. We leaped from our tight circle, moving slowly toward the window, cautious and still wary. I glanced outside, half expecting the shadows to return. But the night remained still, the darkness no longer looming over us. As we peered out into the backyard, I noticed something strange. A small flicker of light appeared in the forest, illuminating between the trees. What is that? Lucy asked, squinting her eyes. I don't know. It looks inviting, I said reluctantly, feeling a pull of curiosity. For all that had just happened, the feeling of peace slowly replaced the fear. Do you think it's safe to check it out? Sam asked, his brow furrowed in thought. The idea of exploring again made my stomach twist. But I couldn't deny the urge to understand what had happened. I don't know, but we should probably stick together if we do, I said, glancing back to my friends. The shadows may have been gone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't uncovered all the secrets yet. With a collective breath, we exchanged glances, the flickering light in the distance drawing us in like a moth to a flame. I could feel the tension still lingering in the atmosphere, but the allure of the mysterious glow tugged at my curiosity. Should we see what's happening? I asked, my voice barely carrying above the silence that had settled after the chaos. Lucy nodded slowly, as if weighing her thoughts. Maybe it's something good. It could be our chance to figure out what that darkness was. Sam looked uncertain, his brow still furrowed, but the faint spark of light seemed to beckon us like a beacon of hope. I took a deep breath, collecting my courage. All right, together then. Let's move carefully. I led the way toward the door, making sure to keep the flashlight steady in my grip. The shadows had retreated, but I was still wary, remembering how quickly they had come upon us before. The last remnants of the darkness felt as though they clung to my skin, waiting to pull me back in. As we stepped outside, The cool night air brushed against my face, invigorating yet unsettling. The backyard was serene, untouched, but the light from the forest pulsed invitingly. The trees danced slightly with the wind, and I couldn't help but feel like they were whispering secrets of their own. "Do you see that?" I pointed toward the forest. The soft glow waxed and waned, as if it were breathing. "I see it," Sam replied, his voice shaky. "But it feels like it's alive, doesn't it?" "It does," I said, anxiety creeping back. "We need to stay together. Don't wander off." The three of us moved cautiously across the grass, the crunch of leaves beneath our feet mingling with the thoughts swirling in my mind. I could still hear echoes of the shadow's laughter, a haunting melody that accompanied our steps. With each stride toward the glimmering light, the whispers from the trees seemed to intertwine with it, constructing a harmony only we could hear, each note coaxing me to come closer. When we entered the edge of the woods, the light seemed to pulse even more brightly, illuminating patches of the undergrowth and staining the leaves with a surreal hue. The air thickened, carrying with it a scent that was both intoxicating and rotten, a mix of blooming flowers and decaying earth. I held my flashlight firmly, the beam cutting through the creeping darkness that surrounded us. Every flicker in the corner of my eye made me jump, reminders that the shadows could be lurking just out of sight. "Is it just me? Or is it getting colder?" Lucy whispered abruptly, her breath visible in the air, despite it being an early fall night. I looked around, and sure enough, a chill danced around us, creeping into my bones. "Maybe we should turn back," I said, glancing at Sam, who seemed much paler than a moment ago. "No way," he said, determination sparking in his eyes. "We can't turn back now. We need to figure this out." I nodded, feeling the tension of my own fears, battling with curiosity. As we moved deeper into the woods, everything became eerily quiet. The typical night, sounds of crickets and rustling leaves faded, leaving only the sound of our footsteps crunching on twigs. Anxiety knotted in my stomach, but the light ahead kept urging me forward. Suddenly, we stumbled upon a clearing, and the source of the glow stood before us, a small, ancient well, its structure covered in twisted roots and luminescent moss. It seemed to pulse with life, the light shimmering like water in the moonlight. I approached slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, captivated by its eerie beauty. "Do you think we should look inside?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of excitement and dread. Before anyone could answer, a cold breeze swept through the clearing, wrapping around us like icy fingers. The well's light dimmed momentarily, the feeling of impending doom washing over us as I struggled to shake off the sensation. "What was that?" I stammered, my eyes wide. Then I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible at first, but growing in strength, echoing from the depths of the well. "Help us, please." Heart racing, I leaned closer to the edge, tilting my head to try and see deeper into the abyss. But all I saw were shadows swirling below, flickering like fish in murky water. "What was that?" Lucy asked, her voice trembling, an edge of horror laced within it. "I don't know," I replied softly, "but it sounds like children." My heart sank, memories of the lost faces I had seen in the shadows flashing before my eyes. "We have to help them." "No," Sam shouted harshly, grabbing my arm. "What if it's a trap? We can't trust it." We went back and forth, my desperation clashing with Sam's fear, but a flicker of hope ignited inside me. What if it's a way to free them? We can't just leave them here. I felt myself drawn to the well, my feet threatening to carry me closer. With reluctance but curiosity still buzzing, I edged nearer. The glow illuminated my face, and I could see my reflection staring back, shadows still clinging to my features. I pulled the flashlight closer to the opening, illuminating the depths within. "That's it," I declared, the beam of light hitting something shiny at the bottom. "There's something down there." Before I could process the implications, the light flickered again, and the whispers grew louder, now desperate pleas echoing in my ears. "Help us, help us." The words coiled around me like chains, pulling my heartstrings tighter. "We need to bring them up. We have to find a way to save them. Please think about what you're doing." Sam urged, his voice rising with urgency. "You don't know what's down there." But it was too late. I felt a force pushing me forward, as if the very air beckoned me to peer into the dark abyss below. Gazing into the well, the whispers spiraled around us, coiling like tendrils of darkness, wrapping around every nerve. Suddenly, with a force I couldn't resist, my hand reached forward, unthinking, and I felt a magnetic pull toward the very edge. "No!" Lucy screamed, and in that instant, I sensed a sudden rush of wind, like something powerful stirring below. I felt a surge, an energy that tugged at the corners of my mind. A mixture of dread and temptation twisted in my chest, the allure to free the lost children battling against the realization of the danger swarming around us. As I stood there, caught between resolve and dread, the shadows flickered wildly. Bone-chilling laughter erupted from within the well, echoes of voices twisted with pain. "Join us! Join us down here!" That laugh wasn't playful anymore. It morphed into a sinister melody, slithering into my thoughts. I could almost see a whirlwind of dark, writhing forms drawing closer, reaching out from the depths, ghostly hands stretching for whatever warmth they could find. I recoiled, panic surging through me. "We have to get out of here!" I shouted, scrambling back, terror gripping my heart as the pressure of those voices clawed at my sanity. The whispers and shadows danced around us, and I felt myself teeter on the edge of sanity, teetering between the light we had found and the beckoning dark. "Run!" I screamed, my voice raw with fear. I turned desperately, looking for the path we had come from, but the woods seemed to have changed. The trees creaked, their branches arched like skeletal fingers reaching for us, blocking our escape. With no other choice, I grasped Sam's arm tightly, pulling him toward Lucy as we stumbled back, the pulsating light of the well fading behind us. The whispers grew louder, enraged and mocking, swirling like a whirlwind that threatened to engulf us. "You can't escape! Come back!" I felt our lungs burning from fear and exertion as we raced through the underbrush, the trees closing in around us, every crack and rustle amplifying the tension, as if the forest itself intended to trap us within its embrace. I shot a glance over my shoulder, expecting to see the shadows pursuing us, but instead, I saw darkness festering in the corners of the clearing, almost waiting for us to return. "Keep going!" Lucy cried, pushing through the brush, her fear echoing louder than mine. The light from the well barely illuminated our path now, creating a dreadful contrast, shadows clawing at our heels, darkness crawling along the ground like a serpent trailing its prey. I could feel the shadows still encroaching, reaching out as if the very earth wanted to pull us into its depths. With adrenaline fueling our flight, we finally broke through the tree line and into the backyard again. I gasped for breath, lungs screaming as the moonlight washed over us. "Are we safe?" I panted, glancing nervously around. But even as I spoke, the whispers lingered, fading but not gone. I could still feel their presence, crawling at the edges of my consciousness, trying to take hold of my fear. I stepped back, feeling the weight of their rejection hanging in the air. "We have to go inside," Sam urged, his expression reflecting the urgency we all felt. Now, as we hurried back into the house, the familiar walls felt almost like a prison now, but there was a strange comfort in knowing we were at least sheltered from that sinister darkness. I closed the door tightly behind us, locking it with trembling hands as the shadows outside shrieked in protest. Their voices grew fainter, but still clung to the edges of our thoughts, a reminder of the horrors we faced. "What do we do now?" Lucy whispered, the fear evident in her eyes as we retreated to my room, seeking refuge in the light. I shook my head, still trying to make sense of everything that had just unfolded. "We need to figure out what the well was. There has to be a way to break whatever curse binds those children," I said, my heart heavy with the weight of their pleas. "We can't keep running from this," Sam added, his voice stronger now. "We can't let them keep us locked in fear." The shadows were gathering at the windows again, whispering over and over, a chorus of lost souls begging for release. "Help us, help us." Their voices twisted in the night, piercing deeper than ever before. Maybe if we understood what happened at the well, we could find a way to stop them, I said, trying to wrap my mind around the chaos. But how? The three of us stood in the dim light of the room, shadows flickering against the walls, our breaths heavy. With panic, but also determination. We couldn't escape this. Not anymore. The call of the shadows had grown too strong, and the only way forward was to face them. As we decided on our course, we didn't notice at first the shadows at the edges creeping closer, waiting for us to falter, hungry to reclaim what had briefly slipped from their grasp. And with every heartbeat, I felt the air grow heavier, thick with anticipation, as if the darkness was plotting its next move, ready to strike when we least expected it. We would have to venture back to that well, unravel the secrets buried deep inside, or suffer the consequences that loomed just outside our door. So, we gathered our strength, our minds racing with thoughts of what might lie ahead, knowing that our next steps would decide not only our fate, but also the fate of the voices begging us to join them. The shadows stirred, whispering promises and threats, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were waiting for an opportunity, ready to pounce as we prepared to face the unknown. We all stood there, uncertainty eating at my stomach. I looked at Sam and Lucy, their faces pale but determined. So, how do we figure this out? We can't go back without a plan, I urged, glancing toward the window where the shadows still whispered, their voices growing more frantic as if sensing our hesitation. Sam nodded. We should do some research. Find out what that well really is. Maybe there are stories about it, he suggested, his hands fidgeting nervously. The idea felt right, but it also sent a shiver down my spine. Searching for answers meant reopening the wounds, poking at the things we'd just escaped. I glanced at the moonlight streaming through the glass. It felt so innocent, so light. But outside, lurking in the darkness, was something far more sinister. Let's start with the internet. Maybe we can find old maps or stories about the area, I said, trying to sound confident. As we gathered around my laptop, the air felt thick, heavy with tension. The shadows at the window flickered like they were alive, like they were eavesdropping. I opened a browser, searching for anything related to old wells in the woods or local legends. My fingers flew over the keys, the sound of the clicking echoing in the stillness of the room. Look, Lucy exclaimed, pointing at the screen. There's a blog post about haunted places around here. My heart raced as I scanned the lines of text, hoping for something. Anything that would help us understand what we were dealing with. The article talked about an old well that had been used decades ago, a place where children would gather to play. But then it shifted, mentioning a darkness that had swallowed the area, accounts of children who had gone missing over the years. It says they were heard calling for help just like we heard, I stammered, a growing dread tightening around my chest. Keep reading, Sam encouraged, his eyes wide with fear and fascination. As I continued, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It mentions that if you listen carefully, sometimes you can hear the voices of the children who didn't escape. I read aloud, my voice shaking. People say that if you go near the well on the night of a full moon, you can see their faces in the water, trapped and begging to be freed. What if that's why they were drawn to us? Lucy whispered, her voice barely above a breath. What if they're trying to lure us back? Suddenly, the whispers outside grew louder, seeping through the walls and sending a wave of panic crashing over me. Stop! I shouted, clenching my fists. It felt like pressing against invisible weights, the shadows pressing closer, taunting us with their haunting melody. Maybe the well is a portal or something, Sam added, anxiety evident in his voice. If we don't find a way to stop it, how many more will they take? I bit my lip, the reality of our situation crashing down on me. If the stories were true, we were standing on the edge of something far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. We have to go back and confront it somehow. My voice was firmer than I felt inside, where panic churned like a storm. Before they could respond, the shadows outside surged, filling the windows with a tangible darkness. The air grew thick and heavy, and I felt the temperature drop sharply. What if they come in? I gasped, backing away from the window. The room dimmed as the shadows pressed against the glass. their forms shifting like smoke. I could almost hear laughter, distorted and mocking, filling the air as if they were enjoying our fear, playing with our senses. "We have to act now," Lucy urged, fear blazing in her eyes. "If they can get in here, we'll be trapped." I knew she was right. We had to face whatever darkness lay in wait, but dread clawed at my insides. "What if it wants us to?" I asked, not recognizing the tremor in my own voice. The thought of succumbing to their whispers felt terrifying, like being pulled into an abyss we might never escape. Sam grabbed my hand tightly. "We're stronger than this. We can't let them win." His determination poured over me like a wave, urging me to push through the swirling fear and find a way forward. "Then we find that well and stop this once and for all," I said, though I felt a flicker of doubt. I glanced back at the screen, still glowing with ominous tales. "But we need to be careful. We know what happened to those kids, and I don't want that to be our fate. Let's prepare before we head out then," Lucy suggested, her voice steadied with resolve. "We'll take the flashlight, maybe grab some rope or a stick as a tool. If we're going to confront whatever that is, we need to be ready." I nodded, moving to my closet and pulling out an old hiking backpack. We quickly packed essentials: the flashlight, bottles of water, and several items that could offer some protection: an old kitchen knife, a thick rope, even a small first aid kit. Outside, the whispers grew louder, filling our heads with constant pleas for help, a dissonant song that both lured and terrified us. "Are you ready?" I asked, though my heart raced with trepidation. Sam nodded, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Lucy took a deep breath and flashed a brave smile, trying to lighten the mood. "Together, right?" "Together," I echoed, clutching the backpack tightly as we reached for the door. With every step toward the exit, the atmosphere thickened, wrapping around us like a shroud. The shadows pulsed impatiently, taunting us as we moved. As we stepped out into the night, the moon hung low and full in the sky, casting eerie shadows that danced and flickered among the trees. The forest loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, as if greeting us with open arms. "Stay close," I murmured, taking a deep breath to steady my racing heart. Every step forward felt like a descent into darkness, and with the whispers following us like a storm, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking straight into a trap. Just as we neared the edge of the woods, the shadows merged into shapes, writhing forms that seemed to shift and sway like figures in a nightmare. Suddenly, I caught sight of something moving through the trees. A shadow shot past, so fast I barely registered it. My heart leapt into my throat. "Did you see that?" I stammered, pointing into the dense fog ahead. "Yeah," Lucy replied, her voice trembling. "What was that?" We pushed on, our breaths quickening as we continued deeper into the forest. The well was still our goal, but now I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. As we reached the clearing, I could see the familiar outline of the well. Its once inviting glow had turned menacing, casting an unnatural light that danced madly against the trees. The air grew dense again, and the whispering voices surged to near-deafening levels, swirling around us like a storm of despair. "Help us, join us," they chanted, the sound wrapping around us like a noose, tightening with every heartbeat. I shivered, glancing at my friends, each of us sharing unspoken fears. "We can't let them pull us in," I said firmly, my voice shaking against the tide of darkness. "Stand your ground. Remember the light. We can't let it go out." The shadows seemed to pulse, resonating with our determination, but also with unchecked anger. "You shouldn't have come back," they whispered, the words hanging heavy in the air. We stood before the well, fear gripping us like ice. The shimmering glow flickered ominously, and I felt the pull of something dark reaching out, its tendrils curling around my mind. Within the well, ghostly faces began to appear, their expressions wrought with pain and desperation, longing for escape. "Help us," they pleaded, countless voices merging into a single cry, echoing endlessly. A wave of sorrow crashed over me, and I felt tears pricking my eyes. "Stay strong," I shouted, steeling myself against their wails. pulling my friends closer. We have to find a way to save them. As if in response, the shadows grew thicker, engulfing the well in a choking darkness, the whispers rising to a crescendo. Join us, join us! Flashlight now! I yelled, fumbling for the beam, illuminating the swirling darkness. The light cut through the shadows, launching the whispering figures back. But as they faltered, a sinister laughter echoed from the well, mixing with the desperate cries. Foolish children, you cannot escape. You belong to us. No longer just beckoning, their haunting voices now bore a thunderous wrath, shaking the very ground beneath our feet. The shadows surged forward, forming almost solid shapes, fingers outstretched to trap us in their grasp. We stumbled backward, instinctively pooling our strength, our bodies together against the overwhelming pull. We need to push back. Together, Sam shouted, raising his arm to shine the light directly into the gaping mouth of the well. Now, and with that, we turned our flashlight beams toward the well, illuminating the dark abyss with a fierce light. The shadows recoiled, their laughter turning to shrieks of rage, crashing against the light, twisting and unraveling before us. I felt a swell of energy surge through my chest, the belief that we truly could challenge this darkness. Keep going. Hold your ground, I shouted, our shared resolve fueling the growing light. But as we fought against the darkness, I caught a glimpse of something horrifying reflected in the well's surface, our faces distorted, elongated, twisted in terror, just moments away from being swallowed whole. For a split second, despair threatened to crush me. If we let them win, we'd become part of the shadows, lost forever. Don't let go, I yelled, clenching my teeth. We're going to make it, together. And just like that, we poured every ounce of strength into the light. It blazed brighter and stronger, breaking through the veils of blackness, pushing it back into the well's depths. In that moment, the shadows shrieked in agony, their forms dissolving into wisps of dark smoke, swirling away from us. I felt the pressure lift, releasing its grip on my chest, and the voices began to retreat, their wails echoing but fading as the light overwhelmed their hold on the night. We won't let you take us, I shouted one last time, and as the shadows faded, it felt like the very essence of the darkness was cracking, collapsing into itself. Keep holding that light, Lucy cried, her hands trembling but steady, the beam unwavering against the void. But as we stood there, our breaths heavy with the effort, the well remained, a swirling abyss that promised both danger and the possibility of rescue. I glanced at Sam and Lucy, their faces still marked with fear, but now lit with a flicker of hope. We had pushed back the shadows, but the struggle wasn't over. We needed to uncover how to truly free the lost souls trapped within, before they pulled us in to share their fate. A sense of determination surged through me, igniting my resolve. We would not be lost. Not tonight. As the whispers faded into the night, a new understanding dawned. I knew we must confront the well's depths and discover the truth buried within if we ever wanted to see the light of day again. Together, we took a step closer to the brink of the unknown, and whatever horror awaited us, I knew we'd face it as one. With the shadows retreating into the well, I felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. But even as relief washed over me, an unsettling feeling remained. The darkness hadn't been defeated. It had merely pulled back, watching, waiting. Okay, we have to get closer, I said, fear creeping back into my voice. If we don't truly understand what's down there, we're just delaying the inevitable. Sam and Lucy exchanged nervous glances, but I could see sparks of determination in their eyes. Slowly, we approached the edge of the well, the air thickening as we drew near. The earth around the well seemed strangely cold, a chill radiating outwards like the touch of something dead. I shined my flashlight into the opening, and the beam penetrated the darkness, revealing the damp stone walls glistening with moisture. Just below the surface, the water shimmered. Its reflective sheen looked almost liquid silver, swirling as if alive. It beckoned silently, whispering promises of knowledge, freedom, or perhaps something far darker. Be careful, Lucy cautioned, biting her lip as she peered over my shoulder. "What if we can see the kids?" Sam's voice was barely a whisper, laced with fear. The thought of seeing lost souls was chilling, yet I felt drawn to that possibility like a moth to a flame. I squinted into the depths, heart pounding louder than the whispers echoing around us. "I have to know." Then, without thinking, I leaned over the edge, the light illuminating the depths below when suddenly, a horrifying vision flashed before me. Faces emerged from the water, twisted and contorted with despair. They reached up with clammy hands, grasping at the air in a silent plea. "Help us," they whispered, their voices a mere breath, chilling and echoing in a hollow, haunting melody that tugged at my heart. The sight was so overwhelming that I stumbled back, gasping for breath as a wave of dread washed over me. "Did you see that?" I stammered, my legs feeling weak. Lucy grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with terror. "What were they? What do they want?" "I don't know," I admitted, shaking. "But whatever it is, it's not just a story. They're real." The air rippled with an unnatural current, and the whispers intensified, swirling around us like an invisible storm. I could feel the weight of their cries pressing down, wrapping around my throat. "We can't just stand here," I urged, my voice rising over the chaos. "We have to do something." As I spoke, the wind shifted, howling through the trees, as if the forest itself was urging us back. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed in the darkness, like thunder, causing us to jump. A nearby branch splintered and fell, crashing into the ground. "This place feels alive," Sam said, backing away slightly. I felt the urge to turn and run, but I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. "No, we need to look deeper into this," I insisted, my own resolve surprise. "Me. There has to be another way, a way to release them." In the depths of my mind, a thought fluttered, warm and frightening. "Maybe we need to make contact," I said slowly, feeling a chill run down my spine. "What if we offered our help?" Lucy shook her head. "Are you crazy? They'll take us in." "Maybe," I replied, trembling slightly. "But what if it's the only option?" The faces in the well surged again, twisting closer, their eyes filled with something intense. Hope, despair, rage. "Join us, help us," they echoed once more, the chilling words reverberating deep within me, pulling at my thoughts. "Okay, what do we do?" Sam asked, studying the well's gaping maw as if trying to read its secrets. "I think we need to call to them," I suggested, my voice low, heart racing. "If they want to be freed, maybe we can reach them." Taking a deep breath, I knelt at the edge of the well. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, drowning out the whispers. "We're here to help," I shouted into the darkness, the words echoing back. As soon as I said it, the air thickened, crackling with electric energy. For a moment, the world felt still, as if the forest itself had paused. Then, the water within the well churned violently, bubbles rising to the surface with increased intensity. It looked as if a storm raged beneath, as desperate hands appeared, clawing at the surface. "Please," I begged, urgency surging through me. "We want to help you escape this place." The water grew even more turbulent, the air growing colder, and I felt a pull at my own heart, dark and deep like a well itself. Shadows began to swirl around, forming darker masses that crept closer, looming over us with eager anticipation. "Stick together," I shouted, reaching for Lucy and Sam, their faces pale with fear. The shadows grew thicker, wrapping around us like a shroud, and the whispers became a cacophony of anguished cries, filling my mind with dread. "Stop!" I yelled, desperately fighting against the chilling grip tightening around my throat. "Get away from us!" But the shadows pushed back like a tidal wave, drowning out my voice, dragging me closer to the edge. I could feel Lucy's hand slip from mine, panic in her eyes, and I clutched harder, trying to hold on against the pull of the abyss. Then, without warning, the voices turned into a chaotic scream. "Help us! Help us! Help us!" It was overwhelming, 1,000 souls crying in a single breath. and I felt my breath hitch in my throat. "No!" I shouted, the words spilling out like a desperate plea. "We can't let them take us." Just then, a blinding flash of light erupted from the depths, illuminating the well in brilliant white. The brightness swallowed the darkness, pushing back the shadows that had wrapped around us. In that surreal moment, I could see the faces more clearly, tears streaming down their glowing cheeks, expressions pooling in frantic hope. "Help us!" they cried out in unison, their voices trembling with desperation. The brightness surged, and the shadows recoiled fiercely, as if burned by the light's purity. "Together!" I urged, my heart pounding as I felt the sudden clarity of purpose fill the air. "We can do this!" With a surge of courage, I yanked my flashlight from my backpack and shone it toward the well, focusing the beam on the faces that swirled with unfulfilled desires. "We're here!" I shouted, lifting my chin defiantly against the gathering darkness. The light pushed through the terrified faces, illuminating their sorrow. I could feel their pain wrapping around us, almost tangible, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. "Don't give up!" I called out, my voice resonating with strength I didn't know I had. The bright light flickered, illuminating the area around us, but I felt the shadows lunging back. They were alive, swirling and surging in a terrifying dance of chaos. "Now!" I shouted, urging Lucy and Sam to join me, focusing all our light into a single beam. As the collective force of our lights blended, the screams around us turned to a high-pitched wail, shaking the very ground beneath our feet. Darkness tangled with light in a fierce battle, and in that moment, I felt like I was standing on the edge of existence itself, poised between salvation and utter doom. "Fight back!" I yelled, pushing with all my might. "We won't let you take us!" The shadows shrieked in pain as our combined force shone brighter than I could have imagined, pushing against them like a beacon. I felt a surge of energy rise from deep within, pulling the light upward into the very heart of the well. Visions faded in and out, and I caught glimpses of geometric patterns swirling in the water, arcs of light dancing alongside the faces, weaving a tapestry of desperation and fear intertwined. But along with that panic, I felt flickering glimmers of hope ignite within their eyes. "Please!" I cried louder, desperate for connection. "Let us help you. We can't leave you here. We want to set you free." The well trembled violently, rippling as ice-cold water sloshed over the edge. The faces turned to me, and I could see their features morphing with each plea, some full of light, others cloaked in shadow, caught between the worlds. Just as I thought I could reach them, the water surged upwards, almost spilling over, a tidal wave of energy threatening to drown us all. Then, with a deafening roar, the shadows lunged. The darkness converged, an engulfing void surged towards the light, snapping at the edges like ravenous beasts. My heart raced as it became a battle of wills, light versus shadow, anguish clashing with hope. "Hold on!" Sam shouted, pulling me back as if sensing the madness consuming everything in sight. "We can't lose now." Fear coursed through me, but so did determination. Together we stood, weaving our lights into something more powerful, a brilliant burst of energy that shone against the black. I could feel their desperate cries echoing in my mind once more, blending through the chaos, urging me to persist. In that moment, as light and dark waged their terrible war, I realized I couldn't save them alone. I had to give everything I had, hope, fear, and despair, all intertwined, a fragile connection that could help guide them back to the light. "We're not leaving you!" I shouted, casting the beam deeper, holding the light steady, amplifying its strength. The water surged once more, splashing against our feet, soaking through shoes and pants, and for a moment, I felt the weight of the world crashing down, pulling me towards the darkness. But I wouldn't let it win. As the shadows clawed closer, and the well roared with fearsome intensity, I felt a spark ignite within me. I clutched my flashlight tighter, drawing courage from its light. "I believe in you," I whispered, sensing the voices reaching out, stretching into the void, grasping at something beyond their reach. "Together we fight." I yelled, my voice echoing fiercely against the howling darkness. And in that instant, the shadows shrieked, the cries turning to a symphony of despair, as the water erupted in cascading brilliance. Light poured forth from the well, illuminating the night, engulfing everything around us in a dazzling, blinding glow. The air crackled with energy, bursting from the core, flooding the ground beneath our feet, wrapping around us in a cocoon of warmth and protection. The screams faded, replaced by a warmth that cradled us, comforting against all that darkness. From within the glow, I could see silhouettes rising towards the surface, the faces of the lost children emerging, their features softening, filled with an otherworldly light. You're free! I managed to cry, tears streaming down my cheeks as the beam brightened, pushing out the shadows, dissipating them into nothingness. The darkness recoiled, howling in agony as the last remnants of despair crumbled before us. As the last tendrils of shadow escaped, the glow enveloped me, and I felt a strange release, a sense of closure, of balance restored. Let go! I shouted one last time, my heart racing as I drew the last of my strength into the light, watching as it swallowed the shadows whole. And in that moment, everything exploded in a dazzling blaze of brilliance. The light consumed the night, the water surged, and for one beautiful heartbeat, it felt like everything was finally at peace. But as quickly as it began, the light dimmed, the well silenced, leaving behind only faint echoes and the soothing sounds of gently lapping water. We stood there. My heart was still pounding, the air fresh and alive. Did we do it? Lucy whispered, her voice trembling, as we gazed into the depths of the well, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily upon us. I think we did, I replied, hope blossoming within me even as uncertainty lingered on the edges. Look, Sam shouted, pointing into the water, and I gasped as I saw ripples dancing over the surface, swirling like a gentle breeze. It shimmered, glistening with the remnants of that light, a tranquil reflection of what once had been. The dark was circling, slowly lifting, leaving behind a calm stillness in its wake. But the questions remained. Were the souls truly free? Had we ended the cycle? Or had we merely pushed it aside? New shadows waiting beneath the surface? We can't forget what happened here, I whispered, feeling the resolve burning brightly within my chest. Just as I turned to my friends, a strange sensation prickled along my skin, as if the night had come alive with a consciousness of its own. The air thickened again, and I felt a chill sweep through the clearing, making me shudder. I shot a glance back toward the well, my heart racing as I noticed a haze beginning to swirl just above its surface. Do you feel that? I asked, the pit in my stomach sinking deeper as I pointed. Both Sam and Lucy stared at the well, their faces pale in the dim light. The luminous glow that had swayed moments ago now flickered uncertainly, cast in eerie, unstable shadows. The water began to bubble, and I could hear a low chanting, almost as if the well itself was echoing the desperate pleas I had just heard. We can't stay here any longer, Lucy urged, pulling away from the edge. I don't like this. It's not done yet. But something drew me closer, an overwhelming curiosity mixed with dread that compelled me to approach the well once again. The chanting grew louder, the voices forming into words I couldn't quite understand, twisting in the air like serpents. It felt like there were remnants of the lost souls, still tangled in the shadows, their despair weaving through the atmosphere. Maybe we can still help them, I whispered almost to myself. But deep down, knowing it might be a grave mistake, as if responding to my thought, the well erupted with an almost deafening roar, the water spraying upwards in a hypnotic flurry, glistening like razor shards in the faint light of our flashlights. Stop! Sam shouted, confronting me. But the light dimmed, swallowed by the power surging from the well. I felt a pull deep within, as if tendrils of darkness were reaching out, trying to snatch me away from my friends. The edges of my vision blurred, and I could hear the whispers escalating into desperate screams again. I can't leave them, I cried, fighting against the invisible grip around my heart. The faces surged back into view, their expressions twisted in an endless cycle of agony and hope. pulling at my very soul. I had to understand their pain. All of it felt so real, so close. It was as if they were surrounding me, begging for release, pleading for acknowledgement. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed by grief, sorrow clawing at my insides. "What do you need from us?" I screamed into the abyss, my voice echoing back in a haunting tone. "We want to help you." My words hung heavy in the air as the mist thickened, spiraling toward me like smoke. The faces twisted. They were so close now. I could see their features contorting. Some looked beautiful, while others bore marks of deep suffering. "Join us," they whispered, their voices melding into an unnatural lullaby that curled around my mind, tugging at my sanity. I could feel warm tears rolling down my cheeks, fueled by the despair I was witnessing, and I knew I had to act fast. I took a staggering breath and grabbed Sam and Lucy's hands tightly, trying to form a chain of strength between us. "We can't let them inflict their pain on us," I said with newfound determination, pushing back against the tide of sorrow, trying to drag us into oblivion. "We have to break the cycle." But just as I felt a flicker of hope, the water surged and knocked us off our feet, sending us sprawling backward onto the grass. I landed hard, the air knocked from my lungs, as the whispers peaked into a furious crescendo. Shadows danced jubilantly toward us, their edges sharp and chaotic, threatening to slice through our tenuous bond. "Get up! Get up!" Lucy shouted, her voice breaking through the despair, prompting us to rise despite our fear. The well still roared, thrumming like a heartbeat, and I could feel the pull of its darkness trying to draw us in. I scrambled to my feet and raised my flashlight again, focusing on the well's mouth. "We won't give in," I yelled defiantly, shining the light into the swirling shadows. "You'll not take us. We're stronger than you." For a heartbeat, the shadows hesitated, recoiling as if they felt the hostility in my voice. The faces faded briefly, and in that quiet moment, I sensed a flicker of understanding. They just wanted to be acknowledged, to have their stories told. But the darkness around them was like an insatiable beast, consuming and twisting everything in its path. Then, with a rush, the well erupted, and the darkness surged forward. Not just shadows, but a pulsing mass of despair ready to drag us back into the void. I felt the grip of countless hands, tentative yet frantic, reaching out from the depths. "No," I screamed, fighting against the tide. "We won't abandon you." My heart pounded as I felt tears well in my eyes, their pain intertwining with mine. I realized that through this pain, they made a connection to me, a bridge forged through shared suffering. Determined, I pointed the flashlight into the swirling chaos, letting it shine brighter than ever before. I allowed the light to ripple from my soul, focusing on those faces, on their desire to be seen, to be heard. I saw them not as tormentors, but as souls trapped, snatched away from their lives. "Let go of your anger. We are here," I shouted, the words bursting from my heart, echoing within the clearing. The shadows retreated slightly, cries mixing with a yearning flicker of light. It felt like their struggles were softening, a hesitancy breaking through their horror. "This is your chance," I continued, my voice steady now. "Release your pain. We can help you find peace." In the next moment, the light exploded forth, breaking through the darkness in blinding waves. As I stood strong, I felt a sudden burst of warmth flow through, igniting the well with a brilliance that reflected the starlit sky above us. The water bubbled and churned, transforming, refracting the shadows until the faces morphed into gentle smiles. I watched in awe, as one by one, each face made its ascent, breaking through the surface of the water, sparkling like gemstones set against the night. The whispers shifted. Now they were breaths in the wind, soft and soothing melodies. "Thank you," I heard them say, chorus after chorus, their voices now harmonizing in a song of release. "We're free." And just like that, the well fell silent. The once mighty shadows dissipated like smoke on the wind, leaving nothing but still waters behind, reflecting the stars shining bravely against the vast night sky. Exhausted, I turned toward Sam and Lucy, our faces pale but alive with the weight of our shared experience. We were breathing heavily, but the tension had eased, replaced by a bittersweet relief that enveloped us like a hug. "Did we just win?" Sam asked, looking down at the now peaceful well. "I think we did," I replied, my voice trembling with emotion. I felt that the warmth of the lost souls now glowed within us. Their spirits were finally free. But as we began walking back, I took one last glance over my shoulder. A flicker, a shadow of something in the darkness, caught my eye. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a face looking back, watching us with kindness and gratitude. Then it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Let's go home," Lucy said, breaking the quiet. We turned together, drawn by the strength of our connection, and we stepped away from the well, leaving the darkness behind us. But in my heart, I knew this was just the beginning. Would they truly be at peace? Or would they return one day to haunt the edges of my dreams? As we walked into the woods, the night felt suddenly hollow, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there were still stories left untold, deep within the shadows.